From alcohol overuse to moderate use, no more shame and blame. Is your own alcohol use on your mind a lot? Since almost everyone who enjoys alcohol has likely had a binge, how do we manage that? How do we know how much is too much? And how do we regain control when we think we've lost it? In this special 12-part series, confidence coach Susan Axelrod interviews alcohol moderation expert Dr. Michelle Perron. This series begins with the question, why are we having this conversation now? And it wraps up with a burning question for you to consider. For your own alcohol use practice, what will your path be? This special series is sponsored by Axelrod Confidence Coaching. Hello, friends. Welcome to a new, important, possibly even life-saving special series podcast conversation. I'm Susan Axelrod, the Confidence Coach. I am hosting this series and I am sponsoring it with my business because this topic is deeply personal for me. On October 6th, I received an email from someone I didn't know. It was a cold outreach asking me if I would like to connect to share messages for the purpose of expanding our audiences. The email was from Dr. Michelle Perron. She calls herself an alcohol moderation expert. I read the email with curiosity and said, what is this? What does it mean to be an alcohol moderation expert? I responded and said, I'd like to meet you. We had a meeting and I listened with curiosity and loved what I heard. I was intrigued with what I heard, and I invited her to step into the confidence zone to have an initial conversation. I warned Michelle at that time that I may not agree with everything she says. I might even challenge her. And she pretty much said, bring it on. We had an amazing conversation at that time in the confidence zone. And as a result of that conversation, I made a quick decision. Not 2 months later, today we are launching a 12-part special series, a deeply personal conversation that is going to impact you and the way you think about alcohol use. Now, I want to say that Michelle is helping me to understand, Susan, you're so serious. And I have reason to be serious. I have my tissue at the ready because it's likely I may show emotion during these conversations. I will be interviewing Michelle, learning from her along the way, along with you. I invite you to get a pen and pad and join us for these important conversations. Also, be sure to listen a second, even a third time. The material is interesting, it's informative, it may even be life-changing, and I really want you to benefit. The first time around, you may not capture everything. You may not catch and receive everything. So I'm going to get us started now with the caveat that you understand that this is emotional for me, and you may see me cry as I just said, but we're both going to grow along the way. Dr. Michelle Perron has 17 years of professional experience working at all levels of addiction care, from inpatient, outpatient, extended care, and telehealth to online moderation coaching services. She has supervised therapists and counselors, taught college courses in counseling, and developed workshops and programs. She believes the key to wellness lies in self-discovery, mindset shifts, and practical ideas that make sense. My friend Michelle, hello, and welcome to the conversation.
Hi, Susan. Thank you so much for having me today. I look so forward to this important topic. It's really at the heart of me and what I do and how I work with clients. And I think it's an idea worth spreading, to use a TED Talk quote there. But too many people suffer under the iron fist of one way fits all. And because of that, a lot of tragedy happens. And I would like people to be able to approach this whole world of alcohol and its use in a lot more humanistic way, where we can support one another and not judge and not fight and not lose things and feel like failures or feel shame. There's another way. There's a better way to cope with overuse of alcohol.
Michelle, as we were working together, we've worked together quite extensively, even in this very short time that we've known each other, and we landed on the subtitle, No More Shame and Blame. And that really spoke to me, along with the line that you say, you can drink to celebrate, not to obliterate. Before we do start here, Michelle, I want to ask you to just share a word on trigger warnings. I think it might be helpful in case it's necessary. I'm going to be learning from you along the way as the therapist and expert you are, but I wondered if maybe you think we might say a word on that.
Sure. When you listen in context to the conversation. Take what you like and leave the rest. I think that's very useful. I do tend to speak directly because of the kind of work I do. Differing as an alcohol and drug counselor, therapist, and coach, right? I have to be direct with my clients because being direct can save a life. And so I don't usually, pussyfoot around and reserve the more raw words, because it's a life and death situation. I have had clients like that in my career when I worked in person in brick and mortar, and it was life or death. People were suicidal. People were harming themselves with very strong street drugs, and I couldn't fudge what I was saying. I had to be direct, and so consequently, over the years, you develop that skill, and you tend to speak directly to the problem and what's underlying it without waiting for someone to come to conclusions. So if you want to hear a direct message about alcohol use in particular and the real skinny on it, so to speak, and what I've developed over years of watching this and working in it, I don't generally soften the blow. I'm very direct, and that, if anything, might be a reason for perking up a little bit and paying attention, so that it's not about you and it's not judgmental. It's about getting to the heart of the matter.
People are somewhat familiar with me because I do this quite a bit. So they know that I will be sitting here providing a soft place to land. But I do believe that one of the reasons I connected with you in that first initial introductory conversation we had together was your direct style. I also have a direct style. And if there's one thing I've learned about this topic, it is that being direct is important. Having said that, to anyone who might be watching or listening, we want you to protect your heart and protect yourself. And so be gentle with yourself and do what you need to take care of yourself. So thank you for that, Michelle. Michelle, wow. In our work together and our preparation, I've learned a lot from you already. I've done a lot of research on this topic myself to prepare, and you have decades of experience personally and professionally in this area. And you've created a very detailed outline for us to follow. We will work to stick to that because the progression is important. And especially in difficult topics, it's important to have a progression that can be seen. So the place we're going to start now, right at the outset, is this. Why are we having this conversation now, Michelle?
I think it's important to have this conversation now because, well, nationally, we're at each other's throats. And there is a lot of stress, the uncertainty of the future, the economy, jobs, AI, all the things we have on a daily basis to challenge what's happening with our children, with our parents. I'm in that sandwich generation. My dad just passed, my mother's 90, and then my children are young and they need my support with their children and so forth. And So with all those, asks that people have of us, I think a lot of people look to alcohol as a solution to manage the stress. It's a number one stress goer. And 94% of people who need help for overuse of alcohol or substance use disorder don't seek help. And I believe there's a very viable reason for that, which goes unspoken. But as I thought about it and had to clarify words around it, I realized that I think the ultimate problem why so many people do not receive help or look for help or get help is not just monetary, as is often it's ascribed to. I think it's the ask of the impossible solution. The only mainstream solution we have today is traditional, and it's recovery with the end goal being abstinence. And of course, if you're drinking, it's a solution that works. If it didn't work, we wouldn't use it. If it didn't help us sleep, if it didn't calm us down, if it didn't elevate our mood, if it didn't make us feel normal, if it didn't work, we wouldn't use it. And when the ask is stop today and count the number of days that you're sober. And if you fail, something's wrong with you. And then your family gets on board because for 100 years, that's all we've talked about, the one size fits all, the one way. Your family gets on board, and now the punitive feelings, not only do you feel bad for failing, but now your family's on you and your peer group might be on you, and the pressure becomes overwhelming. And no wonder so many people fail. It's a very low statistics. 6 to 45% of people get well, whether traditional or through group means like AA or smart recovery. The statistics are very low because the task, I believe it's an impossible task. And the method we get there is black and white. One day I'm finding solace, and the next day I'm not allowed to.
So I'm going to pause us along the way. People who know me, they're going to see my pen. They know I'm writing notes. I'm listening and making notes for us to really be checked in. I want to come back to, I want to make sure I heard what you said, which was 90% of people who use alcohol for stress don't seek help.
It's 94% of people who meet the requirements of AUD or alcohol use disorder do not seek help. Okay, so our statistics are paltry about what we're actually doing. And I think the barrier is the impossible goal.
Right. And I understood that. I love the construct of the impossible goal. One of the things I want to say, and, to tell you the truth, Michelle, we're going to feel our way together in this conversation. Everything I do is organic. We're going to be feeling our way together in this conversation. So the idea of to whom are we speaking does come up here. And you've been working to help me to understand this idea, to whom are we speaking? You even just now said who meet the markers of alcohol use disorder, right? People who meet the markers, they may or may not know what those markers are themselves. They may or may not see themselves, but I wonder if it's accurate to say, if you think you're uncomfortable with your own use, then that would be an indicator to tune in here.
Yes, absolutely. If you're concerned about your drinking, if you feel it's gotten more without intention, or you find trouble cutting back, or you just feel like you don't have enough energy and something's not right, you don't know if alcohol is related to that. Any concerns about your drinking or a family member's drinking or someone you love, this series will be a way that you can ascertain for yourself whether this is a problem that should be treated, or there are some simple things you'll learn along the way that could turn things around dramatically in a short period of time.
The idea of the use leads to self-judgment, which might lead to self-loathing. These are my words. I'm working on them, which might lead to shame, and that shame leads to blame. We blame ourselves and others blame us, all the things. There's this progression. And we're here to talk about this idea of alcohol moderation. What I was drawn to, the reason I'm sponsoring this podcast with my business, the reason, I'm here having this conversation with you is that I am that person who was surprised when you said, there's only been one way, and that is stop and stop everything. Full abstinence, count your days. If you fail, boom, you go back to day one, so to speak. And but we're here to talk about even these words that you said. It says the key to the wellness of this lies in self-discovery, mindset shifts, and then the practical ideas.
Yeah. It's that other side too. For the listeners who maybe have a question mark, but I would have to say that probably I'm guessing, this is my professional guess, is that those 94% who don't seek help also don't feel they need help because they don't know what the level of moderation really is, and there are real numbers attached to that. And not only that, but they don't want to label. They don't want to appear in public, conversations. They don't even want to be online with their camera on if they have to go declare a label and their name and then start, airing their dirty laundry, so to speak. So a lot of people don't go because they don't feel that the description, as we know it in the DSM-5, is applies to them. And many people are over drinkers, or they drink excessively without even realizing that it's excessive, because the norm nationally is pretty excessive.
Right, exactly.
Drink to intoxication every time. That's excessive.
Right. And then, again, we're going to be talking about this a lot over our many conversations, but, what even is intoxication? Do you even realize, is that little buzz, it's just that, you go to a bar to drink, you literally go to a bar to drink, then you get out and get in your car to drive home. So, I'm fine. It's been 3 hours or 4 hours. Let's get right to the markers for the levels of moderation. I think this was one of the things that I challenged or resisted. I found myself in resistance, what do you call moderation kind of thing. So let's talk about what the markers are.
Yeah, so the real markers for women, physiological women, are no more than 2 drinks, no more than 3 days a week. So that's pretty low. That's 6 drinks a week. So when it comes to the holidays, there's going to be more challenge to that. So we have to be irregularly irregular. Same with men. I'll go through that. I'll tell you, for men, it's no more than 3 drinks a day, no more than 3 days a week. So that would be 9. So that's single digit drinking. But once again, we come to the holidays where you might be out more social, more parties, more gatherings, more cookie exchanges, more lunches with your friends and everything.
Summertime.
Yep. Summertime also. 4th of July is very big where I live for drinking. So what we want to do is be irregularly irregular. Most weeks we're going to have, for women, 6 or less, for men 9 or less. Most weeks, that's be your norm. Some weeks you're going to forget to drink. You're not going to drink maybe one day or not at all. And other weeks, when it's Christmas time, you might drink 4 days a week because it's Christmas and you're on vacation, and you might be on the beach in Florida, or you might be on a ski slope in Colorado, or with friends and family on the East Coast. It doesn't matter, but you'll probably be exposed and want to drink more frequently. And so in those cases, then that's what we have the refractory month after, where we can adjust our drinking to slow down more the following month. So if we have a few weeks where our intake is a little bit more than usual, still staying in what I call the ballpark of single digits, maybe a dozen at the most for men, sort of thing, for the week, not for the day. And then the following, when the holidays are over, then you take some time off. You allow your liver to fully repair and your blood pressure to fully return to normal, reduce your carbohydrates, so your blood glucose gets normalized again, and then you've gotten through the holidays. You get back on your walking routine or your treadmill or lifting weights or whatever it is you do, so that you're living in balance, and that's important.
Okay, a few things are coming up for me without a doubt. First of all, I want to let people know that we are going to today get a little bit into nutrition, and we're going to talk about that. So stay tuned for that. That's going to be an important, I call it nutrition. You may say that's not the right word, but you know what I'm talking about. We're going to get into that. But before we get into that, I want to really talk to you about something important, Michelle, and that is, how much is a drink? In my experience, I learned the guidelines of what one drink is. And we know without a doubt that when you have a pour at home, it's more likely one pour is 2 drinks, not one pour is 1 drink. And so, there are these levels. There's the quantifying, and then there's the self-parsing of, well, it's not that much, or, well, it's just that, or, well, 6 or 8, what's the difference? But I want to let people know, I'll be putting it in the notes, referring back to our first conversation where you said people could have 40 to 50 drinks, in I don't remember if it was a week or a month. And then you said they could have 100 drinks. And I'm saying to myself, like, what's happening here? What is she talking about? So I do want to say that the measure of what one drink is, does that really matter here, Michelle?
Absolutely, because the liver can only do its work in real time with real volume. So one drink, right, for hard liquor is 1 ounce to 1.5 ounces, depending on the potency. Wine is 5 ounce pour. That's slightly less than half a glass. It's 5 ounce pour, not 6. 1 bottle of wine is 5 glasses, 5 servings. It was the 750 milliliter bottle was meant for 2 people to share. Each person has 2 drinks, and the 3rd drink either goes to the man or is split between the 2 people. 1 bottle is not one person's drink. It's for 2 people at 2 drinks. So that usually surprises people right off the bat. And then the rest of the question you asked me, sorry.
We were talking, we were just beer fall in this.
Yes, beer. Beer is 12 ounces unless it's an IPA, a fortified drink, and then it would probably be closer to 8 ounces. And so those drinks all equal one another.
Right. And this is one of the places where I want listeners and viewers to stop, replay what that is. You can tell yourself, well, but I'm only drinking 6 drinks a week. I don't drink more than 6 drinks a week, 3 nights a week, 3 nights a week, a few drinks. But if you're doing a double pour or a pour and a half, 1 to 1.5 ounces of hard liquor, that's like this much. That's like nothing.
That's like nothing.
And you're more likely having ice, and your glass is 3/4 full. So that might be 2 to 3 drinks in that first one night. And
I had a client one time, she kept saying she only had 1 drink a night. And I said, well, can you show me the glass that you use? So she went to her kitchen and got her favorite glass. It was the size of a big giant water glass that one would drink a big glass, a 16 ounce glass of water. She said, I put ice up to about 2/3 of the way, and then I fill the rest with vodka. She was not having 1 drink a night. She was having more like 4 or 5 in 1 glass.
And before our listeners tune out here, before our listeners or viewers turn us off or tune out because we've hit on something that may be difficult, I want to invite you to breathe and stick with us for the conversation. I think you're going to be learning something in just a minute. Yeah. So we're talking about the level of moderation. This is one of the first things I learned from you when I said, I'm not sure about this. And you said, well, there are markers, there are levels. So on the one hand, I'm all nice, warm, and fuzzy, but I'm a recovering type A myself in the masculine. So I do like the measures. And again, we're going to talk about a lot.
Yeah. I want to mention here early, so we don't lose listeners, that moderation begins where you are. It doesn't cut you down day one and say, these are the measures, this is all you're allowed. You start where you are and you slowly step down. And we're going to, in the series, we're going to say how you step down. What are the tools that are available? What are the medications? What is the nutrition? What is the sleep? What is the exercise? What are all the things that compounded together make it easy for you to step down? I can tell you, I have worked with people drinking 200 drinks a week, all the way down to 20 drinks a week and less. And without fail, 99% of them are able to reduce their drinking down to the ballpark of 12 or fewer, right?
Wow.
And because it doesn't happen overnight, it may take 6 months, but every reduction is a gain, every reduction is a benefit, and it's celebrated as we go. And I've worked with hundreds, literally hundreds of people to do this process. And it's not failure and it's not shame and blame. We start where you're at. So you don't have to run away and say, I can't have Christmas drinks.
Yeah, that's so good. Thank you so much for saying that. I'm so glad that you got this in. You said moderation begins where you are. And that's not, and the next step isn't stop full abstinence. And that's the difference in alcohol moderation versus, the complete stoppage of everything. So, okay, let's move into a little bit to get us started in this first conversation. We're introducing a lot of things here. Let's talk about the amino acids, the meds, the lifestyle aspect of meeting you where you are.
Yeah. So human beings are multifaceted. A lot of us have a little neurodivergence in our brains. I have that as well. And so, squirrel takes me off just like it does a lot of people, right? When something's exciting or interesting, and I lose track sometimes of where I'm at, and you'll be pulling me back from time to time in conversation. But because of that, we have to take a multi-pronged approach. I view my clients almost like similar to solving a Rubik's Cube. You never solve it the same way twice. It's different every time. While you still want an end goal that's similar, every path is going to be different there. So in that, we have to bring in lots of different tools. And so, of course, it's the moderate alcohol. That's one piece of it. But in order to make you feel better while you're reducing your use, we need to make sure that your brain is functioning properly. Because with overuse comes fatigue, brain fog, irritability, difficulty to thinking clearly, what's the other one? Lack of focus. All that sort of comes with over drinking or excessive drinking. And so we have to use other tools to help your brain work well. So we have to look at what you're eating. We have to look at if you're taking any vitamins of any kind. Are you consuming a lot of highly palatable carbs as part of your life? Typically, clients I've met have often had Coca-Cola and Doritos for breakfast. That's not going to power the brain throughout the day. I've even met people retired having donuts and coffee for breakfast, and then by 11 o'clock, they're having their first glass of wine because their brain isn't functioning properly and they need that stimulation from the wine to feel like they have any sort of motivation for the day. So it's important that we look at the brain and how it's functioning and what you're eating. And then we have to look at movement. Like, am I moving about during the day, even if it's hopping on a rebounder, or is it taking my dog for a walk, or is it going to the gym, or am I a marathoner? So I need to look at all those things. And then we need to look at your allostatic load. How much stress are you bearing every day in terms of not like heavy lifting, but emotionally, psychologically, through your job, through your family, through the relationships you have, through the stressors? Do you have any health issues that we have to look at? Are you diabetic? Are you type 2 diabetes? You have insulin resistance? Are you having trouble digesting food? Is it difficult to digest proteins? We have to look at all of that because we cannot separate your drinking from the rest of your body because it all happens inside, right? And so also, once you start thinking more clearly, we have to look at the role of alcohol in your life. So we start to contemplate, how does alcohol fit overall right now? And what is my end goal? How do I want alcohol to finish my life when I'm done with my process? What's my ultimate outcome look like? What does it look like? So that's another facet. And then other things come up. Sometimes people have a trigger at about 3:30 in the afternoon is when they begin to really crave alcohol. Sometimes that's tied to coming home to an alcoholic household when you were a kid after school. Come home at 3 or 3:30, you were on edge, you might have been anxious at that time, check the driveway to see whose car is home. That way you would know if you could drop your bag at the kitchen, at the refrigerator and open it up for 10 minutes without anyone yelling at you, or if you had to go straight to your bedroom to stay out of sight, out of mind till dinner time. So that's a triggering time. Sometimes it has to do with your first job and maybe you had a punitive boss. So there's a certain time. I know for myself, in my adulthood, when I owned a restaurant, every Friday at 4 p.m., I would get anxious. I'd get worked up and ready to go for the Friday night rush. That lasted for 10 years after I was out of the restaurant business. Every Friday at 4 o'clock, I'd get ramped up and anxious, and because my brain had programmed that 4 o'clock was the time to turn on.
I want to stop here for 1 second.
Yep.
Wow. I really want to stop here for 1 second. And again, invite people to rewind and listen to what you just said, which is you may have, I call it muscle memory, brain memory, muscle memory, that of something that happened in younger years. And it got, like embedded in you, almost between your brain and the physiology. Like you described a physiological response. You even moved your body just now. That was a physiological response from something that was a memory. For 10 years after I owned the restaurant, I still got antsy or something, ready for the Friday night rush. I just wanted to invite people to tune in and realize, wow, I do this work in my coaching. I do a lot of younger life work, your younger self and inner child work, that there may be reasons that I'm doing this that don't have to do with I'm a bad person or because I'm a failure or because I'm weak or whatever you're.
I have yet to meet a failure, someone who's bad or someone who's weak. And I've talked to hundreds and hundreds of people who struggle with alcohol use. So no one is any of those things, not anyone. Usually they're highly intellectual, very capable, but also struggling. And that's
this is such a soothing thought. You can speak directly. I'm creating the cushion here, a soft place to land where somebody who might be thinking about their use, why am I using, how am I using? Oh, I hate it that I do this. Oh, but I can't do this. I just said to my friend today, remember when you used to finish the bottle just because it was there, and you didn't want to waste it or whatever. Or another friend, basically, put herself into AA and years ago now. And she said, I realized I went from one glass to a whole bottle. I thought of her when you said the whole bottle, myself. So before we hate on ourselves too much for what we're doing, we want to realize, I wrote down, I didn't know what to call it. I just put time management, what happens during your day. And so to be tuned into that. And this may be in your total, would you call it subconscious?
Often, yes, most of the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. So we're talking about, moderation begins where you are. We've talked about we're humans taking a multi-pronged approach, moderating alcohol. Moderating the level of alcohol intake is only one thing, which we meet you where you are. We create a step-down program if you're upset about your use. We're going to be looking at your brain functioning. You said, is your brain functioning properly? Do you have irritability, lack of focus, fatigue, lack of functioning, brain fog, etc.? We're going to be looking at that. You also talked about what are the vitamins you're taking. I know we're going to be talking about this another time, so we're not going to go into deep dive, but, I wrote down a lot of carbs and I was like, who doesn't need a lot of carbs, right? Then you talked about what's my movement during the day. And again, if you're noticing that you have less and less movement, can you connect it to this? Or is there something else? What is your movement during the day? How much stress are you dealing with daily? You used a term I wasn't familiar with. It began with an A.
Allostatic load.
How do you spell that?
ALLO, static, allostatic load.
Load, allostatic load. What is your allostatic load? And I wrote down how much stress are you, that means how much stress are you dealing with daily? Then we talked about other health issues. My gosh, I assume at some time along our, 12 part conversation, we're going to be talking about the gut, because you said, are you having trouble digesting food, etc. And then you also said something which I love, which is, once you start thinking more clearly, you've worked with them, you're in conversation with them, they have had an inkling about themselves. I'm not feeling that good. I might want to discuss this. I might want to address this privately, secretly, even just from listening to this conversation. And then you said, once you start thinking more clearly, then we look at the role of alcohol in my life. I mean, I'm repeating this, Michelle, because
I thank you. I like it.
Yeah, this is a lot. It's a lot for people to take in. It's a loaded topic. It's hard, it's sad, it's difficult. It's in the realm of, shame is the deepest, murkiest, feeling, etc. And then, so you said, once you start thinking more clearly, then we begin to look at what is the role of alcohol in your life. And again, in our other conversation, you talked a lot about this conversation. When do you use it? Why do you use it? And you informed us here today, well, maybe you're going to be drinking more over the holidays, in quotation marks. That might be obvious, but what are you doing to offset that? And I really love that you talked about your liver needs time to heal. Your blood pressure needs time to return to normal, etc. This is such great stuff. And finally, then number 6 was, I wrote down time management. What happens during your day? Do you realize that you may be triggered from something that may even be in your subconscious? So these are all the different ways there. I think you're calling it newer methods to recovery.
I like to call it modern recovery. And it's new. I'm going to, divulge. I'm kind of like at the forefront. I'm busting the myths, if you will, because as a licensed counselor, which I no longer keep up licenses, because coaching allows for more flexibility where I can work in more realms. However, in traditional treatment, you're not allowed to speak to nutrition, and I'm certified in nutrition now for addiction. You're not allowed to speak to depression or anxiety, which is why I got certified in positive psychology in addition. And also forever reading research and books and other people's work, and being involved actively in research communities as well as nutrition communities, professional ones, so that I can keep up to the latest information. And also, we aren't allowed to go back and look at like any childhood work, and we're not allowed to talk about, genetics. It's a very small box that an alcohol and drug counselor is allowed to work in, and it's basically around relapse and relapse skills. And then after that, there's not a lot they're really legally allowed to do, which people are multifaceted. If your brain isn't working right because you're using drugs or alcohol, how am I going to be able to educate you when you're not retaining anything because you're in withdrawal, or you're partly intoxicated, or you're coming off a hangover in the morning, or you're jonesing so bad in inpatient treatment that you can't focus on anything but getting out so you can have your first drink. So We're not talking about the whole picture at all.
Right.
And that's time we do.
That's really one of the reasons that I loved this conversation. I was intrigued. I was curious. My life has moved in the realm of holism, holistic approach. I'm a Qigong practitioner. Before that, I was an energy, worker as it was. And it's clear that you're in the modern recovery of which you speak, you're looking at people as whole people. And also the biggest thing is you're not just looking at someone's alcohol use, which frankly is the biggest thing that we look at generally.
It's the canary in the coal mine, really. It tells me
Right.
that there's something wrong elsewhere. And I think that's really, really important for people to understand.
It tells me that there is something wrong elsewhere. And that's, again, depending on the level of how deep in you are, it may, addiction may not even be allowing you to hear that. But our work, our commitment, our intention is that we're getting people at a space, at a stage, at a place where they are exactly where they are now, and who may have these thoughts about themselves. They may be wondering about themselves. This was something that was introduced to me over the last several years, that a lot of people do ask themselves, am I an alcoholic? And never mind about our loved ones, is that person an alcoholic? We're mostly in control of ourselves, and our job is our energy. And if we're asking ourselves, am I an alcoholic, or am I over drinking, or is this an acceptable level of drinking? Because I knew one person who said, my husband came home and drank a 6-pack of beers, almost every night of the week, but it was only beer. I didn't think that was, I didn't think alcoholics drank beer. And so we're really, we're introducing a lot of concepts here.
Yeah. Culturally, in the United States, high volume drinking is the norm. So you go, watch any football game, you'll see people wearing, at least where I live, cheese on their heads and painting their face, all sorts of things. And so, over drinking is very socially acceptable. And unfortunately, it's making us fat, dull-witted, and harder, makes our jobs harder and our lives harder. And we can take a step back from that. We can still go to the party and have some drinks and enjoy ourselves, but we're going to have memories rather than having wiped it out.
Right. That's exactly right. And that was another thing that we talked about in our other conversation, is that level of recall. And if you know that you don't have recall, that's a marker to tune in to this conversation. We agreed that we were going to offer people an opportunity. Maybe we'll call it a challenge. Maybe we'll call it, an action item for themselves. So I wanted to, as always, all of my work is activating. We're for your personal confidence, you rise in your own agency. And so we created challenge number 1. And I wanted to give you the opportunity to talk about this a little bit.
Okay. So for challenge number 1, it has 2 parts. I know I have one written down here, but the first part of it is going to be, how does alcohol fit in my life? Choose the role. Is it mother, father, sister, brother, best friend? Is it your confidant? Is it your soft place to land at the end of the day? Is it serving another role? Perhaps it puts you to sleep at night, or takes away the pain that you might feel when you're sitting alone. What role is it playing? Because when you can identify it playing more than a beverage, then you should probably listen to the rest of this series. And secondly,
before you go on, I have to stop you here. Oh my gosh. How does alcohol fit in my life? What role does it serve? And then you said, is it? And I thought maybe you misspoke. I thought maybe, but you weren't misspoking. You literally just said for people to think, what role does alcohol play in my life? Does it act as my mother? Does it act as my bro, my sister? Does it act as my confidant? What role does it play? And does it get in the way, in between you and your partner or whatever? So I wanted to really say challenge number 1, or part 1A, challenge 1A, is to ask yourself, and maybe, I don't know, maybe we're inviting people to go a bit deeper than, as you say, and you said that in our other episode, is it more than just a beverage for you? We're creating consciousness. Okay. Please continue to part B now.
Part B is what I've listed here, and we'll go into it when we hit our nutrition thing. But I want to give you a very viable, useful, effective option if you're concerned. And that would be, if you want to reduce your drinking, if you're concerned, the very first thing you should do is to increase your protein intake. Protein is vital to build muscle, but also brain neurotransmitters. And you want to feel full so your body doesn't ask for water or food and you answer it with alcohol, which is typical. When the body makes a bid, typically any bid is answered with alcohol when we are drinking a lot. So if you start eating protein, and that is approximately 20 grams of protein 4 times a day for women. So breakfast, lunch, snack, and dinner. And 30 grams or more for men, breakfast, lunch, snack, and dinner. Right away, that's going to start to make the biggest impact into your drinking. You're going to feel full. You're going to feel not hungry, and if you're drinking enough, you won't be thirsty. So by dinner time, if you've had your snack and a big glass of water, some electrolytes, and you've had a couple of hard-boiled eggs, the desire to drink is going to diminish. It's just going to, because starving brains is the primary problem that we're going to talk about when we get to the nutrition episode.
Wow, I'm just kind of stunned. I'm a little bit stunned here. And I knew this was coming, and I'm still stunned. This idea that it really goes back. That's why it was part A and B. What role does it serve? A lot of people drink at night for going to sleep. They think it helps them go to sleep. It
doesn't. The majority does.
Yeah. Right. The majority drink to think that night, or this idea of just relaxing. It helps me relax. It doesn't really actually, but you will be more relaxed if you have more nutrients, improved nutrition in your life. In this case, starting with the idea of proteins. Can you just speak for a minute about amino acids?
Amino acids come from the breakdown of proteins.
Okay.
Okay. So, but in our diet, the absorbability of the different proteins is not as high as one might think. For instance, if you eat a hard-boiled egg or a cooked egg of any kind, about 48% is absorbable in the gut. For a steak, it's more like 32%. So, and it goes down with different types of proteins that we can eat. And so it takes a lot of food and a long time for your brain to get enough peptides or protein peptides to make neurotransmitters. So that's where amino acids enter. So through an assessment, we can target which amino acid you might be, neurotransmitters that you are low in based on symptoms, and we can target which amino acid you can take to help you sleep, help you feel more awake, help you manage physical or emotional pain, help you have a little more energy in your day, help you be able to feel more comfortable in your own skin, help you feel relaxed, get rid of anxiety, improve your depression. Well, amino acids are very effective for those things.
So again, I want to invite people to stick with us. You may be going off and thinking, I didn't come here to hear about nutrition. I didn't come here to hear about neurotransmitters or, peptides or amino acids. And we're here to say that living life as I'm listening, I'm learning from Michelle, you can drink to celebrate, but not to obliterate. And if you want to drink to celebrate and you want to live a life in what Michelle calls modern recovery or alcohol moderation, then there's a lot of information for you to be able to live in that way. I have my own personal experience to be suspect of that, to say, what? But I made a choice to be curious instead of, the old type A, nope, that's never going to work. So I know that doesn't work. So being open to hearing new ways of being, new opportunities, the idea that we are whole beings. I wrote down these 6 things. I'll put them in the podcast notes, etc. We really want to invite people to tune in along the way and consider accepting this challenge. And we'll put the challenge in the podcast notes as well. So, Michelle, wow, here we go.
Here we go. I'm excited. I want to make sure that your listeners also know, our listeners, that my main reason for doing this is because I have been in the front row to watch a tremendous amount of suffering for the last almost 18 years of my practice. And it's not until I started practicing in this way, what I call modern recovery, that I started seeing changes happen much more quickly, and lives get renewed and marriages get saved and health conditions improve, and people get a zest for life. People become happy, life becomes easier, and I've seen it happen in such a dramatic way that more people need to know that there is another way. It's not your grandma's recovery. I admire your grandma for having got white knuckled her way to sobriety, but we don't have to do that anymore. There are ways that work so much better, especially the best kept secret of nutrition. Sometimes the easy way is the best way, right? So I want people to not lose so much marriages and connections with children and parents and jobs, really important jobs, surgeons and psychotherapists and I've seen lawyers and judges and all sorts of people who serve people, social workers and other therapists, and like people who serve people get caught up in this alcohol thing, and the impossible goal of abstinence from day one becomes overwhelming with all the rest of life, and we don't take care of anything around the rest of life. So there's a better way. You are a whole person. You are multifaceted. We have to treat you like you're one thing, not cut you up into parts to send you off to 10 different people to solve the problem. You need to bring all of your energy back together so that you can feel whole again.
Well, you're speaking my language. And when I first heard people can go into treatment 5 times, 10 times, 14 times, 17 times, and still really not be on a strong, healthy, well path, it seems as if it would be nice if there was a different way. And that's what we're doing here today. So, Michelle, I want to say thank you so much from the bottom of my heart, and I will see you next time.
All right. Thank you.